survival horror.
Oh! Oh, yeah. Yeah, fuck.
Is one of my favorite genres.
Do we think we can survive without using the typewriter? I'm gonna say yes. Yeah, no!
And Resident Evil.
Oh shit. Oh, that's my reflection. Yeah. Oh shit.
Has to be one of the hardest sequels to innovate on, just considering the sheer amount of games there is in the series. If you want to watch me play full games, I record all my gameplay when playing through them live on Twitch, and I do appreciate a quick follow. How many times can you really make a new game where you start with a pistol, find a shotgun, upgrade your weapons, do puzzles, fight zombies that become mutated and stronger later, before it gets boring? At some point, the difference is really going to be in the minor details, and Capcom knows this. The amount of details in Resident Evil Requiem is quite stunning, honestly, especially in Grace's part. This is the first game ever that I played where I felt like zombies are not just dumb ragdolls to shoot, but they're actually distinctive and unique individuals with their own personality and even lore. They actually feel like humans turned into zombies. Take this zombie as an example. He barely even cares about you, he just wants the lights turned off because that matches his prior personality before becoming a zombie.
No.
Or the first time I ran into one of these singing zombies, I was absolutely horrified.
Oh, hi.
But what really puts this over the top in details is that later you will find a note mentioning this singing zombie as a unique person. Suddenly, it's no longer just a type of zombie to me, but it's an actual individual that got turned into a zombie, and she's unique in the sense that you won't find more of her. Compare that to most other zombie games where she would just be called a screamer and the game would throw one identical at you every 5 minutes.
Jesus, that scream. That's almost too much. What's voice hacking this zombie did too much of a good job. She's way too scary. Histrionic personality disorder that can only be described as main character syndrome. The patient continues to wander around the care center singing. She often puts on performances in the West Wing spa as if she's competing. That's the two singing zombies.
This is the type of detail that really sucked me in and got me excited about Requiem. I was going into this game expecting just a regular Resident Evil experience, which it still is in a lot of senses, but I was really surprised by the level of detail. It was absolutely amazing. Resident Evil Requiem is one of my favorite Resident Evil games. My favorite one is the second one, and then on second place, it's split between 7 and Resident Evil Requiem. I do have one kinda big complaint, but it's also somewhat my only complaint, or at least all my complaints tie back to this one complaint. That is, I hate dual protagonists. One of my favorite games is Alan Wake 2. Despite it having a dual protagonist, which I hated, the game was still so great. It's one of my favorite games, and Resident Evil Requiem kinda falls into the same category. I love the game, but I really hate dual protagonist, and you feel it even harder in Requiem than you do in Alan Wake, because the pacing can feel kinda off. You go from being slow and scared as Grace to suddenly having badass and fast moments as Leon, and when you swap between the two, the pacing can really feel kinda off. Something I really wish I could do now that I finished the game is I wish I could go back and choose to just replay the game just as Grace, or choose to just play the Leon sections, because I really want to play more of the game, but I really don't want to go through the whole pace switching again. I just want to jump into the action as Leon or have some scares as Grace, whatever I'm feeling like, but not both. Perhaps we get a mercenaries mode, that would be really cool, especially because I think Leon's combat in this game is probably the best combat of any Resident Evil game. And something that also ties into the dual protagonist is this is one of the few Resident Evil games I wish was longer. Usually I feel like Resident Evil games, they drag out a little bit too long. Example, Resident Evil Village, when you're in the factory it tends to drag out a little bit, or Resident Evil 4 when you're on the island, it's a bit too long. But with Requiem I actually wish it was longer, and I think that ties back into the whole dual protagonist thing, because it feels a bit like you're playing two halves of two phenomenal games, but you don't really feel like you're playing one full game. I kinda almost wish Grace had her own phenomenal game and Leon had his own phenomenal game. That way we could have had two great games. Instead it kinda feels like playing two halves of two separate games. The story in Requiem is not that bad. I think it's pretty good, but I know people have a lot of mixed opinions on this. You switch between Grace and Leon, and their stories, they intertwine. Grace is kind of forced into the story by being kidnapped, but at the same time Leon is investigating the guy who's kidnapping Grace. And that way they kind of end up in the same boat. Almost like a separate ways kind of deal. This could honestly pretty easily have been a full Grace game and then Leon separate ways DLC. That might even have worked better, to be honest, because of the pacing issues. It might be obvious at this point, but I'm a huge fan of the Leon parts of this game. And fun fact, my all-time favorite movie is actually the movie that inspired the name for Leon.
The rifle is the first weapon you learn how to use, because it lets you keep your distance from the client. The closer you get to being a pro, the closer you can get to the client. The knife, for example, is the last thing you learn. Okay?
Okay.
And stop saying okay all the time, okay?
Okay.
And not only did Leon inspire Leon, the girl's name is Matilda, the same as the handgun. And I don't know if there's any relation in this, but Leon in the movie really cares about his plant, just like the Resident Evil games care about their plants. We talked about details in Grace's part, but Leon had a lot of details as well. He by far has the best combat of any Resident Evil game. He's just a complete badass in Requiem. It is unforgettable, one of the first times you play as Leon. The zombies picking up the chainsaw one by one, accidentally cutting themselves in half. The chainsaw spinning on the ground, cutting zombies' legs off. Or zombies picking up the chainsaw and accidentally cutting their own hand off or their own arm off. It's truly an unforgettable part, and it really brings chaos to the entire event. Again, it's just one of those details that just adds up and made me go, wow, this is far more than I ever expected.
What? She threw it. Hello?
I know it's kind of a trend in gaming lately to bash new games and talk about how they can never be as good as the old ones, but honestly, I think Requiem deserves to be up there as one of the greats. But at the same time, I never played the original Resident Evil 4, maybe that should be a video. First time playing OG Resident Evil 4 as a Resident Evil fan.
Oh my god, so much blood! What's going on?
If it wasn't completely obvious at this point, I certainly enjoyed the game and I would consider it an amazing game. My personal rating, I would rate it 4 out of 5. For reference, I rated Resident Evil 2, which is my favorite one, 4.5 out of 5, and Resident Evil 7 I rated 4 out of 5 as well. If you enjoy gaming, high quality video essays, honest reviews, horror games, survival games, extraction games and so on, I'd really appreciate a sub. I'm a tiny channel, but I do put a lot of effort into my videos, so it really does help when I can actually see people enjoy my content by subbing, liking, commenting, joining my server or my stream. Thank you so much, I do appreciate it.